The Midwest and Northeast could be in for a significant winter storm by next week, where we have both the European and the GFS computer models forecasting that a significant winter storm should move through the Midwest as well as the Northeast. If we were to take a look at the latest forecast run of the European model at this time, we do see that for most of the United States, you guys are under very dry conditions, as there's a big dominant ridge that's taking hold of the eastern half of the United States. If we were to continue to move forward, however, we should begin to see the weather become a little bit more chaotic, especially further westward, where we're going to see a large area of rain and snow showers, especially in the higher elevations of the Cascade Mountains. So watch out if you're in the Pacific Northwest. And we do have a decent jet stream dip throughout the eastern half of the United States, maybe a couple of snow showers right along the United States-Canadian border. But moving forward into a more long-term future, temperatures should drop by the early week once again, as of a strong northeasterly wind that we will see throughout the Northeast, where there's going to be a low pressure system just off the Northeast coast that's going to interact with this very strong ridge that's going to create just enough of a pressure gradient to bring a stronger northeasterly flow for of course, the cooler temperatures move southward into the United States. However, this nor'easter won't impact the Northeast, as it seems like it's going to be a little bit too far out to sea. But moving forward, we will have a clipper system that will move just north of the United States border, while bringing some snow showers right around Minnesota and Wisconsin. But this clipper system will be key in creating an unstable environment right around the midsection of the country for our next potential significant snowstorm to develop in the Midwest. Continuing to move forward, we do see that not only does this bring rain showers throughout much of the United States and snow showers to much of eastern Canada, but we see a significant jet stream dip right behind this trough, and that's creating an unstable environment right in between Texas and Oklahoma, to the point where we're seeing a large area of rain showers as well as snow showers develop, where the northwestern portion of Texas and New Mexico could get involved with some snow out of this old pressure system if this storm were to come for fruition, which is likely at this point. The big question remains where, because we still have disagreements between the European and the GFS model regarding where exactly the storm system will develop and which trajectory it'll actually take, because we have a pretty big difference when it comes to the strength of this ridge and the position of this ridge between the two main computer models. However, based on what the European model is stating at this time, it expects the storm system to develop somewhere between Oklahoma and Texas, bringing some snow showers, like I said, to the northeastern portion of the northwestern portion of Texas. And we do see that, of course, there's going to be just enough cold air just to the west of the solar pressure system for a high level of convection to occur in the southeast. So you might need to watch out for the potential of severe weather as we approach the midweek of next week, right around Wednesday, February 8th. You need to pay close attention to the possibility of flooding if we were to see just enough instability associated with the solar pressure system and severe weather, of course. And moving forward, we do see that there's still going to be that persistent area of snow showers just to the northwest of the solar pressure system, but it will only but the European model expects this area of snow to only enlarge as it continues to head further northward, of course, as it continues to interact with the cooler air mass that's a little bit further northward. And we also have this next trough that's expected to bring snow to the northeast later during the week. That's going to bring more cold air to the northern Midwest for this area of snow to enlarge as it continues to head further northward, where we do see Des Moines get involved, and this snow is very heavy as well, and we see quite a bit of instability as a result of this clipper system that's going to move through. That's going to bring a stronger northwesterly flow for the instability to, of course, enhance as this trough continues to head further eastward, and we still see that very strong ridge that's bringing a strong southerly flow to like pull from a lot of that warmer and moist environment that's located right over the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to open pretty much an avenue for this old pressure system to absorb a lot of that very warm Gulf of Mexico water. And combine that with the fact that it's going to interact with the Arctic air, we see a classic mid-latitude cyclone look, where we see thunderstorms developing on the eastern side of this old pressure system, and of course most of the convection just to the north and northwest of this low pressure system, and we see a very dry slot between the southwestern portion of this low pressure system. So we're seeing a classic bow echo mid latitude cyclone look, which shows that this low pressure system is expected to be relatively powerful as it heads towards the Midwest, where of course we do see heavy snowfall throughout Iowa, Minnesota, and the northern portion of Wisconsin. And moving forward, we do see heavy snow throughout Green Bay. Minneapolis could get involved with snow depending on the position of this low pressure system. There's still that possibility that heavier snow could move further northward into Minneapolis, depending on the strength of this ridge as well as the position. Because of course, if this ridge is a little bit stronger and we see the ridge move a little bit further westward, then that would bring the impacts and the snow further northwestward. So we're going to need to pay close attention to how this ridge builds over next week. And we do see rain showers will eventually move into the northeast. However, what's interesting is that compared to yesterday, at least with this Clipper system, it seems like the European model sorta is expecting this Clipper system to be much weaker, and it'll pretty much just be absorbed by this low pressure system we're seeing right here, because the European model expects this low pressure system to move a little bit further westward than it initially anticipated. So as a result, we're gonna have a lot more energy that's going to be sucked into this low pressure area rather than this Clipper system. So this low pressure system will pretty much be the center of attention when it comes to all the air molecules some spiraling around it, which won't leave this initial Clipper system with a lot of energy to at least develop independently from this low pressure system. So as a result, we see quite a bit of a different scenario for the northeast, where we see that the low pressure system, as it approaches the northeast, ends up being a lot weaker, and it's due in part due to the fact that the European model expects the low pressure system to be weaker than it initially anticipated, and we don't see as significant of a jet stream dip as a result for this low pressure system to at least intensify fast enough to bring the impacts to the United States. And of course, for much of the northeast, again in this scenario, it's primarily a rain event, as it seems like this ridge is again stronger than the European model anticipated. So it expects this storm to be mainly a Midwest threat while bringing some snow to the interior northeast, such as Maine, and doesn't intensify until well after it moved past the northeast. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. The European model has been the more reliable model, so it might be better to lean towards this model, but we can't completely disregard the GFS model either. But it's certainly something to keep in mind that the European model now wants to take a track further westward, which will bring more of the snow to the Midwest rather than the northeast, thanks to a ridge that's a lot stronger. Now let's take a look at the GFS model. So GFS model, at least for the short-term future, is stating a scenario that's very similar to the European model. However, the key difference is that the GFS model wants to develop this low pressure system a lot further eastward, and this is due in part due to the fact that this ridge is a lot weaker and it's a little bit further eastward initially, which means that this low pressure system is expected to develop a little bit further eastward, bringing more rain to Arkansas and Louisiana than, let's say, Texas and Oklahoma, where in the northeastern portion of Texas and Oklahoma, you don't experience any snowfall at all. So definitely a pretty big difference compared to what the European model is stating. And continuing to move forward, another thing that's interesting is that at least with this initial low pressure system, the GFS model doesn't expect much snowfall at all for the Midwest for at least this first low pressure system. It becomes a different story when we take a look at the second one that's lurking right behind this low pressure system. And continuing to move forward with the forecast, you're going to see that the Clipper system that the European model initially did not expect to be that powerful. The GFS model is forecasting this Clipper system to be pretty much a primary snowmaker when it comes to the next week's snowstorm. And continuing to move forward, we see a lot more snow associated with this initial Clipper system than what the European model is stating. And this is definitely very key, because this brings more snow to the more northern portions of the Midwest. And what's another thing that's very interesting too is that the jet stream dip is a lot more significant, and we do see much more snow for the northeast in this scenario, and quite a powerful storm system developed, because the GFS model expects jet stream dip to be a lot more powerful thanks to the fact that this Clipper system is more powerful than what the European model expects. So there's definitely pretty big difference when it comes to the forecast and where exactly this winter storm will develop. But I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. As right now, I'm still leaning a little bit more to European model, but we can't completely disregard the GFS model either because it's still considered a very reliable model, although the European model has been the more reliable model, at least for this winter. But definitely something to keep in mind. Taking a look at the European model's forecast when it comes to a 500 millibar height anomaly, we do see a very powerful ridge is expected to build by next week that's centered right over the eastern half of the United States. And as a result of this, we see the low pressure system develop a lot further westward. So it's expected to take a trajectory a lot further westward as well. And that would enhance the chance of a major snowstorm for much of the western portions of the United States because it's going to be west enough to interact with the cooler air mass that's associated with the northern Midwest. So the chance of a snowstorm in the European model scenario, thanks to a stronger ridge, is a lot more likely for the Midwest and less likely for the Northeast, especially since this Clipper system is expected to be a lot weaker than what the GFS model expects. Comparing the European model to the GFS model, we see a relatively big difference. This ridge isn't as strong, so this low pressure system develops a little bit further eastward, and that would prevent the possibility of snow throughout the Midwest, since this storm would take more of a southeasterly trajectory, which would prevent this storm from being able to interact with the cooler air mass that's located just to the northwest of this low pressure system. However, we do see that this Clipper system in the 500 millibar height anomaly is more powerful and would bring more cold air than the European model. So regardless, we still would see snow in the Midwest, just not from this initial low pressure system that's expected to develop in the southeast. And the GFS's model scenario would enhance the possibility of snow in the northeast thanks to a weaker ridge, as this storm would be able to move a little bit further eastward and bring more of that cold air further eastward as well, thanks to a weaker ridge that the GFS model is forecasting. In terms of the snowfall accumulation forecast that the European model is proposing for next week, we do see that there's a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow. This impacts the bigger cities such as Green Bay, as well as Minneapolis. Des Moines gets involved, Omaha, Nebraska gets involved, even as far south as Kansas, and maybe a little bit of Oklahoma City could get involved with some snow as well if the European model's depiction was correct. And we do see that for much of the Northeast, it's entirely a rain event. We do see some snow in the interior Northeast, but all the big cities in this scenario, and even the areas further southward into the Northeast, not necessarily in the bigger cities, don't experience any snowfall from this. So definitely still a high level of uncertainty with both the main computer models in disagreement. But I'm going to show you guys that a significant snowstorm is likely to happen by next week. The main question remains where exactly the heaviest snow will fall. Now let's take a look at the GFS model's forecast. The GFS's model's snowfall forecast over the same time period shows a very different scenario where we do see that much larger area of the Northeast gets involved with snow, including Pennsylvania, the southern portions of upstate New York. It's still missing out on the bigger cities, but there's definitely that higher possibility that the snow could move up along the East Coast cities if we were to see a little bit more of a trajectory change further eastward, which isn't out of the realm of possibility just yet. And we do see that this does impact the areas further southward in the Midwest as well, where Indiana, Illinois, Iowa gets involved, as well as a larger portion of Milwaukee, and even as far south as Ohio gets involved as well. So definitely a different scenario with the GFS's model scenario. We're going to need to see which one will be the more correct one. I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. So this is a more general forecast of the European model's snowfall accumulation. So we do see that I won't put snow totals just yet because it's still a little bit too early. We still have pretty big differences between the two main computer models. But if the European model scenario was correct, this would bring a lot more snow to the northern Midwest, where Green Bay will get involved, as well as Minneapolis, Iowa, and then mainly the interior Northeast will get involved with the heaviest snowfall, while maybe maybe the southern Northeast gets just a small amount of snow showers moving through with the European model scenario, but that's about it. So I'll keep you guys updated over the next several days. Still a decent amount of uncertainty, especially depending on where that ridge builds. But I will say that we're more likely going to experience a major winter storm next week. Like I said, it just all depends on where exactly that snow will fall. But I thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content.